And I went down this rabbit hole on IBM, actually.
Yeah.
And you had quite the run there. And part of that tenure at IBM, were you there when they were just coming up with Watson as an idea?
Yeah. I was CFO of the analytics division, which was one of the divisions where Watson was born.
As a CFO, you have to do storytelling around the product and how AI is kind of used. You have this advantage where you've kind of been there since the beginning of when people were talking about it. Do you think that the terms we use and just the way that we communicate how AI is used has changed a lot?
I think if you can get to a place where you can do more showing than telling, you're winning.
There we go.
It's one thing to talk about it, and you talk about the variety, the veracity of data, all the different V's at the time, and now it's all about the different, prescience, predictability, et cetera, all the P's. But at the end of the day, show it. Show it if it's real. How do you use it? How does it make an impact in my life?
Is this thing on?
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Welcome back to the Run the Numbers podcast. Today's guest is CFO of Zeta Global, a MarTech analytics platform, publicly traded, Chris Greiner. I'm happy to have this guy on because, wow, he was working on AI at IBM with Watson before it was even a buzzword. And since then, he's led in the sectors from healthcare to MarTech to enterprise tech. And now he helps lead a public company with 15 straight quarters of beat and raise performance. So in this episode, Chris and I cover what he learned about AI back when it was still a science project and how that shaped Zeta's current approach to automation and intelligent workflows, how to tell whether a company's data advantage is real or just marketing fluff, and what happened when Chris cataloged every task in the finance org to uncover what work was actually getting done and what he chose not to automate on purpose. What's on his personal IPO pre-flight checklist? He's done this a few times, and the emotional and cultural cost of relentless public market performance, and why he believes strong financial stewardship isn't a constraint, it's a launch pad for innovation. In the lightning round, he also tells us a hilarious story about making friends with the Emperor of Japan while he was living abroad at IBM, and some thoughtful advice he would give to his younger self. All this and much, much more after a short word from our sponsors. So if you listen to this podcast, you'll know that I am incredibly passionate about the FP&A space because that's the route I went to get to CFO. And I want to tell you about a tool that has exploded over the past few years. It's called Aleph. And I remember getting outbounded by them about 2.5 years ago, and I actually took the bait because they claimed to be able to do a demo with my live data, with me right there on the call. And so I had to see it to believe it. And it was the founder running demos back then. Shout out Albert, hope you're listening. And he connected my NetSuite and built my P&L using their Excel add-in in like 15 minutes. And I was really impressed. Since then, Aleph has gone on to raise money from some of the top VCs out there, and they've built an impressive roster of customers. Many of their customers have been on the podcast, like the CFO at Turo, 8 Sleep, and Zapier. They're all really big champions and supporters of Aleph like me. But it's not just an Excel add-in. Aleph also allows finance teams to work with their live cross-system data using Google Sheets and their web app. And that's cool because it gives teams the option to support a wide range of needs and workflows like budgeting, forecasting, and variance analysis. And speaking of variance analysis, they're doing some really cool things with AI-powered variance analysis. It basically allows you to figure out what's going on and why, and it takes the time that you'd usually spend from hours to minutes. It's really cool. So I highly recommend checking them out and taking them up on that demo or trial, just like I did back in the day. And you can learn more and get started at getaleph.com/run. That is getaleph.com, aleph.com/run. Tell them CJ sent you. All right, I got to get up on my soapbox for a sec here. Everybody's talking about AI-powered this and automated that. But here's the thing about revenue recognition. It's not just about moving data around. It's about getting it right, full stop. So RightRev is laser focused on one thing, RevRec that auditors actually trust. See, there's a difference between automating revenue processes and automating revenue recognition correctly. RightRev was actually built by the godfather of RevRec, who understands ASC 606 compliance, audit controls, data validation, and the flexibility needed for complex B2B contracts. We're not trying to be your billing system or your ERP. We're the revenue recognition engine that sits between your contracts and your financials, making sure every dollar is recognized correctly, on time, every time. Companies like Snowflake and Logic Monitor don't just need fast revenue reporting, they need revenue reporting that's audit ready from day one. And that's honestly where RightRev shines. And what I love about RightRev is they're not out there trying to be everything to everyone and just slap some, AI slop on top of it. While everyone is building these massive platforms that do everything in a kind of mediocre fashion, RightRev does one thing exceptionally well. They make sure your revenue recognition is bulletproof. Ready to stop gambling with your RevRec? Visit RightRev.com to see how we make complex revenue simple. That's RightRev.com, where revenue recognition actually works. This episode of Run the Numbers is brought to you by Navan, the all-in-one travel and expense solution. CFOs and finance leaders, let's be honest here. Your T&E process is broken. Manual reconciliations waste valuable time, policy violations drain money, and limited visibility creates unnecessary risk. Nobody likes that. Navan cuts through these problems, giving finance teams the clarity and control needed to close with confidence, faster and with fewer headaches. Connect your existing eligible Visa, MasterCard, or American Express cards directly to Navan and keep all your card rewards and banking relationships. Get real-time expense tracking, automated policy enforcement, and AI-powered reconciliation that works. Companies like Anthropic, Unilever, and Zoom trust Navan to manage travel spend smarter and increase compliance. Are you ready to modernize your T&E process? Visit navan.com/runthenumbers for your demo today. That's navan.com/runthenumbers. Tell them CJ sent you. They'll hook you up. Chris, thanks for joining me on the podcast today.
Same, CJ. Looking forward to spend some time with you.
So I try to go deep on everybody's resume before we get on the call, just so I seem somewhat prepared. And I went down this rabbit hole on IBM, actually. It was like a company I hadn't looked at in a while, and you had quite the run there. And part of that tenure at IBM, were you there when they were just coming up with Watson as an idea?
Yeah. I was, in fact, there's one point in time, there was 13 people in my family. I literally grew up with IBM. That was one of my last jobs. I was the CFO of the analytics division, which was one of the divisions where Watson was born.
There are 13 people at your family who worked at IBM?
At one point in time, yeah, it's crazy.
My goodness, those Christmas parties must have been a blast, huh?
There's some funny stories for you, but there's some good stuff. A lot of history there. I'm a huge fan of it.
It's like in Step Brothers when he's like, I'm going in the family business. He's like, Dale, I'm a doctor. But I guess you went into the family business.
I guess I did. I was on the later side of leaving when most were leaving, but it's great memories. Really good training ground.
But take me back to when you were coming up with Watson, because everybody's talking about AI, what it is today. And I think there are a lot of like quotation marks because AI can mean different things to different people. Yeah. But like, what was the vision back then with Watson?
Answers, right? It kind of started with Jeopardy, right? It was, faster times answers was really kind of the first version, if you will, of ChatGPT. But what's interesting, if you think about the progression of how kind of AI has evolved and is still evolving, it's gone from, access to answers to access to intent to now we're in this kind of world of like, how do you fulfill intent faster and perform? So and who knows where it goes next? That's not my ballywick, but it has been really interesting over the last 10 plus going on 15 years. That's like my career has been in big data and AI, and it's been incredible to see how it's evolved and it hasn't changed as much at the same time.
Yeah, because we're going to talk about that because you've seen AI develop across a number of different industries. And I guess if you're looking at it from IBM's Watson to now Zeta's AI Agent Studio, how has your relationship with data evolved across your career?
It's wild. I mean, if you think where my last kind of relevant experience at IBM was working in big data and AI, we had one of the largest business intelligence platforms, right? So it was all about how do you take vast amount of corporate data and visualize it, kind of, just good old fashioned BI. And that's it was a great place to start. When I made the jump to Navan, which was a healthcare data analytics company and had one of the largest healthcare data sets in the world, I went from this realm of just turning data into information to data into impact, like actual life-changing impact. We were helping health plans, the biggest health plans in the world, provide better quality of care by figuring out what people's propensity was to take care of themselves based upon the data that we had. So that was cool to be in an industry that was, truly making an impact on society and making it better, to then LivePerson, which was all about taking vast amount of consumer-led data and helping that customer journey through, agents and really bots and chatbots at the time, but be much more conversational, to now in Zeta's world, once again, this kind of theme of one of the largest data sets, really only second to Facebook, Google, and Amazon. And how do you help brands leverage all of what you and I are showing interest and intent in every single day, and put relevant engagement in front of us to, as consumers, do we want to make a decision on that product or not? So it's so interesting how AI can be in so many different industries, but I've really seen it go from just kind of visualization of the data to data making an impact to now like seeing around the corner. And that's what all this is about right now. How do you see around the corner and then go fulfill that end outcome?
That's really cool to think about it that way. And I like how you brought up the evolution of chatbots. Like, even if I look back in time at a company like Drift, they used to do like the inbound sales stuff and also some customer support. But now you look at some of the new AI chatbots, like a Decagon or something, like I'm like, whoa, this is like gone next level in just like the last 5 years.
Yeah. We've done something really interesting with our AI agent studio, and to kind of get all the marketing speak out of it, right? We've kind of taken a look at all of the keystrokes that have happened over the overall platform for years and years and years, and just automated them. And what do people constantly using our platform to do, whether it's to retain a customer, to grow a customer, to acquire a new one? And a lot of that was put on the human to do all that work before that last like 5-10% that makes an impact, because a lot of it's data aggregation. And it's like, what does all this mean to me? We've kind of taken all those steps, that 95%, and just given it to you in a snap of a finger. And it's pretty cool. I mean, it's freed up. It should be freeing up our customers' time to be more impactful in how they're creating their engagements. I know for us internally at Zeta, we're trying to now discover how do we make our work that much more automated. We're early in the journey. I think most companies are early in the journey, but it's incredible to see what's happening with the tools that you and I use every single day.
As a CFO, you have to do storytelling around the product and how AI is kind of used. You have this advantage where you've kind of been there since the beginning of when people were talking about it. Do you think that the terms we use and just the way that we communicate how AI is used has changed a lot?
I think if you can get to a place where you can do more showing than telling, you're winning.
There we go.
And it's, for us, and this has kind of been the case at all the different stops that I've had in my career that have AI and big data embedded. It's one thing to talk about it, and you talk about the variety, the veracity of data, all the different V's at the time. And now it's all about the different, impressions, predictability, et cetera, all the P's. But at the end of the day, like show it that's real. How do you use it? How does it make an impact in my life? And for us at Zeta, it's a big part of how we do investor relations. I'm not too shy or proud to say that, let's bring our chief data officer, let's bring our chief product officer, let's bring our heads of sales into the room and show people the platform the same way our customers use it every single day. And it just makes it a little more real. It exposes, by the way, some of the gremlins that are still in there, and there are, right? It's early days, but doing more showing than telling, I think is just, you're always going to win when you're at that side of the equation.
And at the core of any company that's able to use AI in like in a creative manner is some sort of underlying data asset, right? You alluded to Zeta's competitive moat, that you have one of the best marketing sets of data out there on user intent, et cetera. How do you figure out whether a company's data advantage is real or just storytelling? Because me as like a consumer or someone who's even just trying to buy B2B tools, sometimes I'm like, I can't really tell if there's something real behind this.
Kick the tires, right? Test it. Back to kind of showing is telling. We're do more showing than telling. I think we can, as a business, we're so keen on, in my world and with investors, vast majority of my time. For the rest of the company, they should be in front of customers. And what I try to bring to the investor's perspective is every single day what we're doing in the company. We try to do our level best to not have slides in our presentations. So we'll go into some of the largest airlines in the world, the largest health companies in the world, the largest banks in the world, the largest consumer retailers in the world. And we will bring them everything Zeta knows about their customers, not just their customers, but their prospects before they give us any data, right? So that type of unlock tells them that, there's a level of credibility going in that's very high. We have educated ourselves on that business. Part of what I loved about the questions that you sent me is it's evident you spend so much quality time before the interview, many, many more times than what we're going to spend together today preparing. But it's a huge compliment. And I think customers feel it the same way. When you can kind of invest that level of time and the salesperson's in there isn't selling, they're just demonstrating capabilities and what we can do for the brand. So for us, getting past storytelling, I think is just showing, allowing the customer or the investor in my world to kick the tires.
Thank you for that compliment. I appreciate that. And I think there's like a larger lesson for CFOs and any finance leader out there. It's like, you only have so much time in front of like a customer. And a lot of times as CFOs, you are pulled in to show at least the ROI. It's like, how do you accelerate the time to like talking about what matters? And you can do that a lot of times by just doing your homework.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I was reading this story that you actually went and you cataloged every task in the finance org to identify automation opportunities. Well, so you got to break it down. What did that reveal about how people were actually spending their time versus how you thought they were?
Yeah, we're still, we're still cataloging. It tells you how much we're doing every day. An enormous amount of data aggregation. And you would think it'd be easier. We have good systems. We have good partners and vendors that we use. But if you really look at the tasks day to day, it's either inbound requests for data that then requires assembly, or it's part of their normal course of their job to gather that data to then make a decision or to make a forecast, et cetera. And what we're now realizing is that if we could just, the same way we try to make it easier for our customers to get data instantaneously, how do we generate those insights instantaneously for our own teams rather than have them do all this exploration work and all this data assembly work? How do we just give it to them packaged? It's got to be the right data, though. I think cutting the corners on getting data in the hands of people is dangerous when you sacrifice the accuracy of the information. I'll often really stress to the team that speed is very important, urgency is important, but it never comes ahead of accuracy. So we're spending a lot of time cataloging. What we're realizing is assembly of data, exploration of data. That is the most time consuming, but we'll get the wrong answer if they're not analyzing the right sets. So I think when we're on our next turn of this project, it's going to be, how do we make sure we don't miss something? We don't omit an important element of data that has to be considered in some form of analysis, whether it's being done in accounting or business development or financial planning or investor relations, et cetera.
Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. What does the future hold for business? Ask 9 experts and you'll get 10 answers. Bull market, bear market. Rates will rise, rates will fall. Can someone please just invent a crystal ball already? Until then, over 40,000 businesses have future-proofed their companies with NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 cloud ERP, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one fluid platform. With one unified business management suite, there's one source of truth, giving you the visibility and control you need to make quick decisions. With real-time insights and forecasting, you're peering into the future with actionable data. Whether you're closing the books in days, not weeks, you're spending less time looking backwards and more time on what's next. If you listen to this podcast, you'll know I ask CFOs all the time to rep their tech stacks, and I would say almost every one of them use NetSuite. And that's what I would use too. Whether you're a company earning millions or even hundreds of millions, NetSuite helps you respond to immediate challenges and seize your biggest opportunities. Speaking of opportunity, download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning at netsuite.com/metrics. The guide is free to you. That is netsuite.com/metrics. Ooh, yeah, it's netsuite.com/metrics. Please, guys, I really need this. As a CFO, you're expected to bring clarity to everything, including how your company manages ownership. The tools you use should make that easier, not harder. But when they come with hidden fees, data you can't always trust, and support you can't rely on, you end up with more frustration than clarity. That's where Pulley comes in. Pulley is the cap table management platform built for finance leaders who need accurate, decision-ready data from a system that works for your business, not against it. With Pulley, you get intuitive workflows, audit-ready reporting, and support you can count on, all backed by predictable pricing you can plan around, so you can stay compliant and make smarter decisions about your company's future. Manage everything from fundraise modeling to ASC 718 reporting to custom liquidity programs, all on one trusted platform. Hundreds of high-growth companies like Linear, Fathom, and Runway trust Pulley to help turn ownership into a strategic advantage. And joining them is now easier than ever. You can switch to Pulley in as little as 5 days. And for a limited time, they're offering 25% off your first year. To claim your exclusive offer, visit pulley.com/mostlymetrics. That is PULLEY.com/mostlymetrics. Pulley.com/mostlymetrics. Well, if you've listened to this podcast before, you definitely know that I think it's cool to be a fan of business. I'm obsessed with researching how the best companies operate and specifically how they manage their money. And I've learned that a company's financial stack can make the difference between world domination and obscurity. That's why I want to tell you about Brex, because I want you to rule the world. Brex is an impressive financial services and software company that has grown immensely since it was founded in 2017. In just the last year alone, Brex accelerated customer acquisition by 50%, with 91% growth in enterprise customers. And there's good reason that over 30,000 companies from startups to enterprises have flocked to Brex. Brex offers the world's smartest corporate card on a full-stack global platform that is everything CFOs need to manage their finances on an elite level. Plus, they offer modern banking and treasury, as well as intuitive expenses and accounting automation, bill pay, and travel. Wow, it's all on the roster whenever you need it. Brex grows with you. CFOs tell me all the time that Brex makes it easy to control spend before it happens, automate annoying tasks, and optimize their finances. Because listen, at the end of the day, Brex helps them make every dollar count. So if you're a fan of smart businesses too, check out Brex at brex.com/metrics. That's brex.com/metrics. This is awesome. I want to dive into this for a sec, because a lot of the different CFOs have been talking about, they're saying we want to be using AI internally to essentially like allow for governed data exploration, where like people can go out and look for stuff, because like finance teams aren't meant, and BI teams aren't meant to just be like almost a customer support org where you're getting tickets like, hey, I need the data cut this way or that way. Because to your point, like sooner or later, you're just underwater.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you don't want that, like I call it the dueling dashboards scenario, where like CRO comes to the meeting with one cut of the pipeline, CFO comes with another, and apparently they both pulled it from the same place. So it's like, how do you deal with those tensions?
It's wild. I'll tell you a great story back at IBM. We were in the process of globalizing IBM. IBM at the time was kind of run very geographically dispersed way. And if you went to IBM Japan for a set of financials, it was different than what IBM corporate was looking at, which is for an amazing company at the time like IBM, like even IBM had challenges like this. So you're exactly right. So how do you make sure you're pulling from the exact same source of truth? What we've done in our company is all sales data comes from one place. It's fully integrated with the ledger, which the ledger is then fully integrated with customer outcomes. So it is absolutely paramount. You're right that you're pulling from this single source of truth. And then I think when you're doing that, no one's focused on the reporting the news side of things. They're more focused on the making the news side of things. So don't make it about, is the news accurate or not? Make it like, okay, what am I going to do about it? And that's what we're trying to do our best at. And I think we do a pretty good job.
Yeah. I want people to be able to find what they need, but at the same time, you don't want them to be able to do like their own skunk work analysis that like finance was probably the one who should have calculated like CAC payback period or something on it. So do you have those inherent tensions like in an org, even at your size?
We do. I wouldn't say it's prevalent. It comes up, but it's not a theme. We have plenty of challenges at Zeta, but that doesn't rise to the top of the challenge list this week anyway.
Chris, we talked about how everyone's automating manual work. This is kind of a left-hand turn question for you, but what's something you deliberately chose to not automate and why?
Forecasting. It's going to sound like a Holiday Inn commercial, but for a brief period of time, I was a chief product officer at a public company, ran sales at a public company. Point is that I spent a fair amount of time outside of finance to figure out what the heck was wrong with the finance function. It allows you to have a high degree of empathy. Forecasting, I think it's very tempting to take all of this amount of information that could be quantified and then put an algorithm on it and have it spit out an answer and then move on. But at least in my experience, when you're with customers every day, there's so much more qualitative input that matters, even more so than the quantitative input. So like, what's the sentiment behind the numbers in the pipeline? What is the buying patterns of customers? Even though it says that there's this level of replenishment revenue in the pipeline, like what are we hearing? Because the macro is very different today than it was 6 months ago, than it was 2 years ago. So I've really resisted the urge to build kind of, set it and forget it on the forecasting tool. and really rely on that staying hands-on. And by hands-on, I mean like conversing with the organization, meeting with our hunters, meeting with our farmers, sitting down with the extension of the marketing team. It's just so important to have a qualitative ear to the ground as much as you have a pulse on the quantitative side of things.
It sounds like even though you have access to more data than anybody at the company, you still talk to sales reps a lot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm a wannabe sales rep.
Yeah?
That's what I would do all over again. I probably do better.
I joke on the podcast all the time. Sales is actually like the hardest job ever.
Well, you've gone from a world. I mean, you've had this really interesting journey yourself.
Yeah.
See, I think you totally buy into this diversification of perspectives. No, I think, I mean, this is going to sound harsh, but it's intended to be. The only two places in most businesses, not all, because you don't want to be kind of, use all encompassing statements, but most businesses, value is created in the product that you make and how effectively you can sell it. And literally everything else in between is like a suck on value. And I'm in one of those functions that's in between. It's finance. That's HR. That's legal. That's like, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to belittle my function and others, but at the end of the day, you have to recognize that you've got to free up as much capital and get rid of as much red tape as you can to put product in the market faster, to test and learn on it faster, and to put great salespeople in the market to go sell it and learn from their mistakes quickly. That's where value is created, and I want to be where value is created. I think it's why I do really enjoy sitting down with investors, listening, helping them understand what Zeta does. And it's a work in progress every day, but I think that's why that part of the job I'm so drawn to.
Oh, it's so funny. Like when I graduated college, I thought the only way to work at a tech company was to either code it or sell it. Like I had no idea that you could do finance.
Yeah. And now you're doing one job where you get to do both at the same time. You're creating a product and you're selling it at the same time. It's amazing.
Yeah. Look, who would have thought? First of all, I never even thought this was a job. I think the only podcast that existed when I was in college was Bill Simmons' podcast. So
it's a great one, but it's on my phone. Yeah.
Yeah. It's my favorite podcast of all time.
Yeah.
On forecasting, Chris, it's so funny how like with AI and with all the different quantitative models we can spin up now, you can feel almost better about the number that comes out. Like I think this is more accurate, but you feel more uneasy about how it was calculated because it becomes like this black box. Do you ever feel that tension of like, we have better technology to calculate these things now, but if I still can't go out and build my own deterministic, price times quantity model, then talk to a couple sales reps, like I'm not going to feel as good about this at the end of the day.
You've got to have such a pulse on what the dials are, right? So in our business, there's called a handful of dials that if you can build simulations off of different dial settings, right? So one of them is how many more customers am I going to have this quarter than I had last quarter, than I had last year? What is that average rate of spend? And then there are inputs that drive that in our world. What is the growth of my existing customers versus the growth I'm getting from new? What is the mix of my business? And then how many quota carriers do I have this quarter than I had last quarter? And what is their productivity and their ramping? And if you can picture in your mind's eye, and this is how we run the business every day, there are dials for each of those. And then there's kind of subsettings within those dials that we build multiple different variants of cases that are going, running every month, every quarter, and then obviously every many quarters. And it's that kind of multi-dial setting or multi-simulation setting that at least for me, you start to get this kind of range of what the outcomes to be. And obviously they start wider at one point in the period and they get narrower and narrower and narrower. And then I think when you add the next level of like, how do you then start to take your process to just not the current quarter I'm looking at, but the next several quarters? How do you really start to look around the corner? And I think the key is just dial setting and really making sure that each of those dials are the highest upstream dials from the outcome. And then I think you can start being really predictable in your business. And we've done that. I mean, our track record, fortunately, speaks to that with our 15 quarters being public and 15 quarters of beating and raising.
Well, that's a great segue to my next question here, because you've got 15 straight quarters of beat and raise. Like that's something to put up on the fridge. Does that pressure add up, Chris? Like, is there a cost to that streak, not financially, but emotionally and culturally? Like, oh, wow, 15 in a row.
No, because we're not even halfway to our what great is. I'll tell you a funny story.
Yeah.
So it goes again back to IBM. IBM's kind of, I hope I don't he's a wonderful man. He's like the father of IBM software. I wouldn't say grandfather, but like the father of IBM software division. His name is Steve Mills. Brilliant, brilliant person. And I had the good fortune to work with Steve and his team for many years. And Steve was not one to decorate his conference room ornately. He just had like one picture in it, and he had a really nice conference room. And over the many years that I finally got the guts up to ask him, like, okay, why have this picture of this, at the time, a Soviet era pole vaulter? I mean, literally, I was like wondering all these, like, every time I went in, like, God, today gonna be the day I get the guts up to ask him. And I didn't ever, it took me a long time. And he looked at me as if I had like three heads. He said, well, you don't know who Sergei Bubka is? And I said, no, I don't know who Sergei Bubka is. And he's a world record holding pole vaulter, in the Soviet Union. And he went on to tell me the story that, Sergei was incentivized by the government to keep setting world records. He'd get a huge stipend each time he set a world record. Well, he wouldn't go beat it by 6 inches or 8 inches. He would just beat it by the smallest of margins just to get that incentive. And, he goes on to tell the story. He said, ultimately, he is the epitome of beat and raise. So, he did it for 36, he set the world record 36 straight times. And, when you talk about 15 quarters in a row, like it's great, but like, it's not even close to not even halfway to where we really that's great. So anyway.
That is the coolest analogy we've had on the podcast. Thank you for sharing
Funny
that.
little story. Yeah. So, culturally, look, there's pressure that goes with it. People get it. We try to create a culture of people should be realistic in what they expect the quarter is going to be, because that's going to ultimately just determine, how we guide and what our philosophy is going to be and how we guide that quarter. But, I think it creates great alignment, great accountability. It means the salesperson's call. It means when the product team is going to get a product delivered out the door. And it means when the finance team is putting a guide out there for the street, we're all aligned on wanting to set expectations at a certain level and then beat. And it's not as though you can say you're going to decline in revenue and then eke out growth and that you feel good because it's a 16th straight quarter. You've got to have good performance that goes with it, obviously.
To link it back to dials, which we were just talking about, because that goes into your forecast of feeling confident enough to go with that. What's the hardest part to, I guess, feel not predictable enough, but just confident enough that it's going to occur on time? Because I've spent most of my career, Chris, within privately held tech companies, and I could never figure out with the product team when an actual product will come out. From the time that we sat down to do annual planning to say, okay, are we going to have this out the door in Q3? Right. I think I'm 0 for 12 on doing that. Take me through your mind of how the levers connect to that.
I have an incredible finance team. One of our leaders, Levine Advani, but he sits next to other great people like Satish Ravella and James Neubauer and Matt Faw and Madison Sarah. So great people in my team. But Levine and I work together and really unique. Going back to 2008 at IBM, he has worked with me at every single company I've been in.
He was there too.
So we can, every year. For 4 straight companies. So he's created an incredible system that he's taken to this company, which is around daily pacing and our ability to look at how much revenue we did that day, which isn't normal for software, right? No. You don't kind of think about it on a daily basis. But he's brought in great partnership with our organization, our sales team, this daily cadence of how much revenue are we delivering? What does it mean for the month? What does it mean for the next month? What does it mean for the quarter? What does it mean for the quarters ahead? And it allows us to not have to wait a week or a month to figure out that one of those dial assumptions we made was wrong. We figured out really quickly. And I think being able to see that close in front of you, but also kind of seeing, again, on the horizon is just, it's a gift he's given us, and a capability he's given us that, has allowed us, touch wood to keep on this, trajectory of where we're trying to get to, another Buka.
If I could, a marketplace company for daily revenue, okay, I get that, but a software company, that's incredible, daily revenue.
Yeah, and it's neat because a lot of how our customers monetize our platform is how they use it, and about half of our revenue is tied to that consumption-based model that you put it earlier, that price times quantity.
Would you mind just speaking to like the lens of daily active users, monthly active users? Like how do you size up your business from that activity standard?
Yeah, so if you put yourself in the seat of our customer, which is I think is always the best place to think about it. In our case, it's the chief marketing officer, and these are chief marketing officers that are at the biggest brands globally. They're spending hundreds of millions to billions in marketing, and they would engage with Zeta to be able to first access our data set. Take whatever, let's say you're working with an auto insurer, and that auto insurer obviously has a lot of first party data. They know who their insurers are, right? They have a lot of information about them. We're able to wrap around that incrementally more signals and value to help them understand what are their existing customers' intent. Are they looking to add on to policies? Let's say we're helping them only on auto. But we know that those same customers are now searching on maybe boat or home or something else. They're also using us to figure out how to take who their best customers are and find similar prospects in market. And we do that in our world. We help them do that by driving different strategies around which digital channels you and I are most likely to engage on to make a decision on a brand. And our software and our data and AI will know that you and I, for example, I am personally most responsible to messaging. And it's at a certain point of day. I'm high responsive to email, but more so my work than my personal. We know those types of insights. And in our case, we might bill by number of emails sent or impressions made or mobile messages deployed. So this concept of daily revenue is the output of, for this particular customer, what type of quantity do we do for them and at what unique price point do we charge for that different channel? And that every day is being calculated as a pacing of what our business looks like. And it allows us to, like you said, kind of fine tune assumptions throughout the quarter. Even though we can't change our guide within a quarter, it does give us the confidence that we're tracking to where we typically want to be in terms of what we like to beat by, or what we can, for good fortune beating by.
That's an amazing explanation. I really like to nerd out on the usage-based activity view of a business, because the last company I was at, we were selling, we were a marketplace and software for auto garages. And so we could predict basically like how many brake pads would be sold on a Monday versus a Tuesday versus a Wednesday of when people would typically bring in their cars. But then there were also these exogenous shocks, like from like weather patterns. Like you would see nobody brings their car in during a snowstorm, but unfortunately there are accidents during snowstorms, so they bring them in after. So it's kind of like this art and the science of like blending typical customer behavior, but also with economic or sector specific behavior to get to like a revenue forecast.
See, Zeta would come in and help you determine what those signals are. Like what we have this really, I wish Winnie Sheng, who's our EVP of our data cloud, she has this really great product that they're working on, they're rolling out called Leading Indicators. I wish she'd call it her time machine. But it's the ability of a brand to look backwards and say, gosh, if I had the benefit of knowing what were those signals that I should have picked up on that ultimately led to that decision. We were working years ago with a ride sharing company, and they were very interested in helping to find new drivers. And we were helping them find very interesting leading signals for who would be the best candidates to be a potential driver for this rideshare company. And what we found in our data cloud was that people with a very high propensity to purchase like comfort wear, leisure wear, that wanted to just be comfortable, in their clothes, would also be comfortable driving. And it was an incredible pool of audience that we went after, and it was a very valuable signal. But you wouldn't, to your point, you wouldn't really normally pick up on that. But that's the power of data, right?
I love this stuff. Like this is what gets me hyped up. We were talking to Lily Yang, the CFO of Strava, and I love to run too, but like we were talking about activity-based metrics of like how you know if someone is going to continue to be a recurring customer. And like we're not talking about like revenue and profit and stuff. We're talking about like I don't know, did they log a new type of running shoe that they purchased on Strava?
Yeah, I'm always jealous. You Strava people. I go on like once a year. I go on like a Trek Travel or Backroads bike trip, and they are like the diehards that like set up their Strava ride, and they're like, and I'm so jealous of them all the time. I wish. It's intimidating to me though. I'm just there not to fall off the bike.
But there's something to be said though, as a CFO, and I guess it's in your product too, that you're looking at non-financial metrics. You're looking at, I don't know if you'd call them activity-based metrics, but they're things that are more, you can quantify them, but they're more qualitative about like the persona of somebody.
No, you nailed it. In fact, one of the areas within sales operations and working with the sales leaders that we've now codified as a company, it's been one of our best predictors of how successful a sales rep is going to be in their ramping processes. We've kind of internally coined them their hustle metrics, but it's basically what they do every day. And, you know, in my old world of managing sales, I was, of course, a hawk on what did my pipeline look like? What was early stage versus late stage? What was the progression? What were my win rates? All important things. But what I glanced over that we've now since kind of brought into frame is this concept of like, what do I do every day? How many emails do I send? How many phone calls do I make? How many meetings do I set up? What does my activity in our sales database look like? And what we found, and now what we've also cataloged as a company, we think about our sales teams in like classes of, and we look at them in 3-month increments within each 12-month class. So class of 24, 23, 22, 21, we have all this data now. And what we found is that we can go in and look at sellers XYZ's activity-based metrics at day 126 and compare to what day 126 like at our best seller and what like bad frankly looks like. And it's your habits every single day that are actually the number one predictor of like your success as a salesperson. What I learned the hard way, unfortunately, is to drive great sales productivity isn't to focus on the people that are good and making them great. It's actually not losing winnable deals. It's getting rid of the sales reps that just weren't meant for your team or meant for your sell your product. And it's these activity-based metrics that allow us to get to that answer within 8 to 12 weeks rather than 8 to 12 months.
It's so funny you said that because we were talking to Ryan Walsh, who has a product called RepView, and it looks at like quota attainment across different orgs that are out there. And he was saying the most impactful thing you can do, because you're talking about incentives and using spiffs and stuff, the biggest needle move is actually to move the reps in the middle of the pack. It's like you're the ones who are going to kick ass are going to kick ass no matter what. Like they're going to overachieve. The ones who aren't that good, they're probably not long for this world. And you probably have a pretty good idea of who they are based on some, like you said, like, are they even making phone calls? But it's the ones in the middle. If you can toggle that switch just like 5% more, it's like a non-linear impact.
Yeah, we've gone from hiring much more experienced people as our way of attacking that problem. If
Okay.
you know, 4 years ago, maybe our average tenure sales rep, so their selling experience, 3 to 5 years professional selling experience. There were outliers, obviously, but if you kind of look at the thick band of like where most people were in their career journey, it was pretty early. Whereas today, we like purposely index more heavily on really experienced sellers. It means we're going to pay them more probably, but they know how to ramp themselves faster. They obviously come with a terrific network and book of business. So it's also kind of, and then, you know, the other secret sauce that we really focus on, and this makes the hiring, you know, funnel smaller because it's there's not as many of them, but we hire with an industry vertical expertise. And I've always found that if you go on sales calls and if you're with a sales rep that's kind of just a generalist, and there's nothing against this person, but they can't go into the Gap or they can't go into United Airlines or they can't go into Citibank and talk their business model, sound exactly like someone that sat in that business for their life. Like you miss the nuances of what's important to the customer. You're not listening because you don't have an ear for it. But on the other side of the table, they know you're not credible, right? But if you can go in with like, you're deep on healthcare and you're deep on telecom and you're deep on insurance, which is how we hire, which is why we don't throw bodies at growth. We're very focused on high quality people that have these expertises. I've found that to also be a kind of a really powerful way to accelerate that sales productivity.
That's amazing. So finding reps who have had more time on the phone, for lack of a better term, it really does pay dividends, even though you probably have to comp them a bit more.
I don't mind it. I mean, make your salespeople rich. That was like that's like still say it all the time. Make your salespeople rich.
Yeah, I love that. Salespeople probably listening too. My brother is at AWS doing sales. He's probably nodding his head like, yeah, they should.
I have a brother at Workday. I think he'd say the same thing. Yeah.
I want to talk about taking companies public. You're a public company CFO. You've done the trek to Wall Street, and you've done it for wildly different sectors. What's your pre-flight checklist before you greenlight an IPO?
Gosh, such a good question. I wish every checklist looked the same. Okay. There are ingredients that I look for, if you will. Those common ingredients are like, is the product the best in the market? And maybe it means it hasn't yet, like, it's a new release product. It just got replatformed. But it is a great product, because at the end of the day, back where we started, like, you have to have a great product. So you can only have so many great sales reps who can sell a mediocre product. If you've got a best in market product, you're going to win. And then you just build a great sales cadence around it and keep, building more, faster innovation around that great product. But, so I look for a great product as a core ingredient. I'm a sucker for working for founders. I love their energy. I love their innovation. I love that nothing makes them happy for the most part. I'm a glutton that way. I used to playing for coaches that told me I suck all the time, which I did, but that motivated me in an odd way. But I love the energy of a founder. I think they move fast. So that's a key ingredient. And that's been a key theme over the last 3 companies, outside of IBM that I've worked for. I look for, like, an embracing of change. And I would be a pretty bored CFO if every day I was just focused on only CFO stuff. And I'm lucky enough to work with a management team that I bring them into my world because I think they add a ton of value, and I get brought into their world and get to add little nuggets of value, I hope. So that's a key ingredient, to be able to, like, this kind of collaborative culture and that's certainly the case here at Zeta. Outside of that, I love building management systems. I feel like my job every single day is, where's the highest and best use of capital? How do I put an incredible management system around it, and then measure the living daylights out of it to make sure that it's working? For whether it's been in the healthcare data analytics space, the, conversational bot space, or automating marketing, it's those ingredients tend to add up to a pretty good outcome.
That's an amazing explanation. Not enough can be said about just knowing that it's a great product, because you also see, like, to the number one in any market, like, it's just a disproportionate amount of shares that go there, and just how much easier I think it can get when you have success that builds upon itself. Like, if you look at, like, an Uber versus a Lyft, like, that's a great example.
Yeah. It's a great example. I agree.
When you dig into the finances of any company, and it doesn't have to be just before you go IPO, it could be afterwards. I've heard you say in the past that strong financial stewardship is a catalyst. It's not a constraint for innovation. Can you unpack that one for us?
Yeah, I mean, and it goes even beyond, like, stewardship. I think it, like, first starts with, like, a strong business controls culture. I remember sitting with, the IBM CFO used to tell me, Chris, the number one predictor of bad financial performance is if your business controls start softening, your posture gets worse, you start having these little material weaknesses that show up, or these deficiencies that show up in your processes. And, like, if you really want to start at, like, the very beginning of a funnel, like, outstanding business controls is just crucial. So how do you create that culture to where, like, that comes first, and you don't feel like you create a culture where people have to get into the gray. They understand it from the get-go. This is how you do things. So I think that is the biggest part of great financial stewardship that I think then leads to growth. But stewardship then, really quickly goes into partnership. How do you create trust in an organization? And, in my experience, one of the easiest functions where you can have mistrust between the business and the other constituencies in it is finance. It can be a gotcha function. It can be a traffic cop function. It can be, this armchair quarterback, right? Type of overseer. How do you get past that and not be this inspector of what people are doing, but be the enabler of what they're doing? And I think a lot of that, back to kind of how we started with, if you think about where value is created, I came up with this concept of closer to code, closer to customer. How do we put the finance function, all resources, as close to the code as we can, making product, and as close to the customer, which means selling it. And that means my function needs to become leaner, easier to work with, and all functions, adjacent to mine, finance, legal, HR, et cetera. And we're fortunate to where the leaders of those functions today also, like, fully buy into that process. So I think great business controls posture is good financial stewardship, and great partnership with the business built on trust is good stewardship. And that usually leads to pretty good outcomes. And that has been the case for Zeta. It's one of the things I'm actually most proud about.
Chris, when you talk about controls, what are, like, 2 or 3 of the top controls that a CFO at a publicly traded company, like, has their eye on at all times?
I mean, you got to be looking at rev rec all the time, right?
Okay.
I mean, it is, you can have well-intended people who just don't understand process, that you just get in front of them with process, keep reminding them process. We have an incredible internal controls function that we've built out. I mean, we've done it under the leadership of my Chief Accounting Officer, Satish Ravella. It is a team that we could have easily outsourced and given to somebody else, but we wanted to purposely build that expertise in the company. That obviously, that internal audit function reports directly to the audit committee. But how do we every single day be testing? Every single day create that process of just looking at our systems, looking at our how our people are selling and the documentation. Are we getting everything tied like we need to? It's always my expectation, by the way, going to every audit year that you have a clean audit. I don't know what CFO wouldn't say that. But, if you look at, this year's, it was as clean as you could possibly get of an audit. I think unless you start from day one with that type of culture and that type of process, you can't get to that outcome. And you rely on the world's best auditors. In our case, we use Deloitte. And, I do think we're fortunate within the world of Deloitte, which is incredible to work with, I think one of the best teams Deloitte has to offer.
I don't know why. I didn't expect you to say RevRec is number one, but I give you a lot of credit for that. I think that is totally that. If you think about the source of a lot of problems, it's because you don't have either enough revenue or it wasn't calculated the right way. It all goes downhill from there.
That's exactly right.
I love that. Chris, I hear it all the time. Companies acting like they have to choose between growth and margin expansion. Why do you think that's such a common fallacy?
God, it's got to be a top 20 question from investors, which is, if how much faster you think you could grow, but what would you have to sacrifice on the margin side? And it's this weird, I just haven't experienced it being true. I'll give you kind of, how did I come to this realization? At our healthcare data analytics company that I started as a chief product officer at and was COO before becoming CFO, when the teams that I started to work with early on in my career there, one was the product group. And the product group's incentives were to have a product that produced the highest ROI for the customer, which makes total sense. The operations group's primary incentive was to have the highest margin, so the most efficient product. And oftentimes in this particular product that we were selling, those could come in conflict with one another. If we're trying to drive an outcome for an end customer, for a big health plan or provider, it may take heavier engagement of our product, it may take more phone calls, it may take more digital notifications, it may take more in-home assessments, but that drives cost, but it also drives a higher ROI. So how do you find this this common incentive approach, or how do you bring these teams' incentives to be more aligned? And that kind of was this unlock to where, hold on, I can have two organizations that might be in conflict with one another. I want to grow faster, but I want to be more profitable, and kind of bring them on the same playing field. And, to me, that then came back to walking into the organizations that I've become a part of and literally stratifying all of the labor costs and all the people costs on this barbell, kind of back to, how do if I have one side of the organization that is closest to code and the other side closest to customer, where do my people sit on that spectrum? And interestingly enough, and I don't think it's an indictment on companies, I just think it's human nature. We tend to fill the people with the information, people that provide information rather than maybe are creating the product or selling it. So we have this heavy middle, and what we can do is you can just redistribute the middle. So you get all this efficiency by taking out, becoming more lean, more efficient in the middle layer, but then giving that back to the product team, giving that back to the sales team. And, this redistribution, if you will, of where resources sit, then allow you to build more product faster and sell more product faster, while at the same time, you just became more profitable because you got rid of all these resources in the middle that were mostly measuring things. So it's been an unlock that we haven't had to wrestle with as a company. We've been able to, it's a really, it's a stat that makes me feel good. I don't know how much others feel about it, but there's 510 plus public technology companies. And if you look at the number of those that from 2021 to 2025, what's expected of them of consensus, have grown over 20% and expanded free cash flow margins every single year over that period, there's eight out of 512, 513 public companies. We're one of those eight. So I think it does speak to this fact that not just in a period of time, but over an extended period of time, it is possible to grow fast and be more profitable at the same time.
Part of that does go back to product and making sure you have a great product, because if customers like it, they'll buy it more often. There'll be less errors, so you need less customer support, et cetera. And the salespeople just have an easier job to do. But it also made me think, Chris, I love saying closest to code. I'm stealing that, first of all, putting it on bumper
Steal
sticker.
it. Use it.
I haven't heard that. And then closest to customer. For finance teams, I know they're kind of in the middle, but if you had to guess, what are they more comfortable leaning closer to?
Yeah, if we probably over-index on closer to customer, and I think, but I do think it could be at the detriment of not. Back to your wrestling of like, how do I get a product out there faster? How do I measure the ROI of my engineering team? I think we have done our own engineering teams and product teams a disservice by not as being as close to them. So as I think about even evolving my own team, my organization, we have a really good beat and pulse on revenue and sales. Yeah. Really, really good beat on it. How do we get that good of a beat in partnering with the product and the engineering team? I think is our next journey and our next evolution. And that's something we have to do. But I think today we probably definitely bend more towards the closer to customer side.
Oh, and it's not just you. It's like every team that I've ever been on too. It's like you go to talk to the engineering team about the cloud cost. Like that's always just like an interesting conversation. Like, are we just talking past each other with terms? Like, what's going on here? And trying to explain like how one activity that they're doing with a product may cause more cost there. Like, I think that's a struggle that a lot of finance people have, just because the vocabulary and the definitions just aren't as close to that of like measuring the sales team's productivity. Yeah,
we've gotten so good at pointing people to like a customer or an outcome, but how do you point infrastructure to an outcome? Yeah, that's definitely the next. And there are products out there. I mean, there are, to be fair, like we are beginning to work with different tools that can be more tightly linked to, this particular infrastructure cost leads to this customer outcome, which should, by the way, I'm more focused less on like the margin it drives for the company, because that's important, but like, am I pricing it right? Is frankly like, that is my main motivation for that side of the house. But we'll get there. I mean, it's just one of the many opportunities we have.
I really like how you called out the pricing there, because it links to the revenue opportunity. And a lot of finance leaders, when they talk about like, what's the infrastructure cost, they're only thinking about how do I optimize this for cost.
I love pricing. I think is the most under talked about, underappreciated discipline, that when I talk to folks about their career and have any nuggets to share about mine, it's one that I would have loved to have spent more time on. One of the more interesting projects that I got to work on is actually when I was living in Asia for a few years with IBM. We were very, very big on value-based pricing, because in a lot of the Asian markets, labor arbitrage, just like if you go sell to a large Indian enterprise, bringing down cost of labor just isn't one of their top pain points. There are other pain points like, detecting fraud on telecom lines, things like that, but it's not like my labor costs. So how do you price in that scenario? You price for impact, you price closer to value. We're working with a really interesting business that had vending machines, and all products within those vending machines were priced the same, whether it was December or whether it was July. And one of the outcomes that we looked at was, well, shouldn't you and I value a cold drink likely more in the summer than we do in the winter? Why don't we price that way? Why don't we price more, charge more in the summer for a cold drink than in the winter, and vice versa? So this, and it's really kind of, okay, that's like intuitive value-based pricing. How do we bring more and more to that like software world, this concept of value-based pricing? I think it's a really interesting kind of next frontier to be tackled. But pricing as a discipline is one of the coolest. It's scientific, it's art. Like it's just really, it's really, really good. Really, really fascinating.
That was a beautiful story. And for anybody out there struggling to understand value-based pricing, it's like, would you pay more for a nice ice cream cone at the beach during the summertime or wintertime? There you have it.
That's exactly right.
Chris, I'm going to take you into what we call our long ass lightning round.
Cool.
So what's an example of something you've screwed up on the job before? Could be in any role, but we're all human.
I was working at Pier 1 Imports when I was in summer of high school to college, and I had begged for like give me a little bit more responsibility, a little bit more scope, and they allowed me to start ordering inventory. And we had more Papazans that year than I think all of the state of Texas needed. That was a pretty big screw up.
When you started to talk about Pier 1, I was like, did they let them use the forklift? What happened here?
Papazans.
All right. Next one here. All right. I've never had this one in the lightning round. Tell me about making friends with the Emperor of Japan.
Oh, man. It was incredible. So I lived in Tokyo, and I lived in Azerbaijan, which was not far from the Tokyo Lawn Tennis Club. And if you go back in time, when the U.S. Won the war and they established their embassy, it was a very, very, very large property. And they didn't need all of the size of the embassy that they had kind of reserved. So they carved off a large piece of the land. And when they gave it to the government, they said it had to be kept for international use. So the government turned it into a tennis club. It evolved over time to be effectively, for golf fans out there, the Augusta National equivalent for tennis in Japan. It was the elites. But they had to maintain a 50% membership for non-elites. And it was mostly expats that were there. And it was, for me, I think it was in my early 30s at the time. And I wanted to play tennis. I liked tennis. I thought it was a fun activity. So I signed up. And within my first week, there was the signups for the club championship. So why not sign up? So I signed up with a buddy of mine to play doubles. And the Japanese, who are so formal in many things, one of which is sport, published the brackets. And I remember my assistant at the time, who was doing some of the translation for me, ran over to my desk and said, Greiner-san, kind of printed out the bracket and pointed out that it was, Greiner and Kirtley against the Crown Prince and Ono-san. And I thought it was like another American guy being funny, calling himself the Crown Prince. Well, it wasn't. It came to be, it was actually the Crown Prince. And there was a set of protocols that was required before you were going to play the Prince. And my boss, who was the president of IBM Japan, left, little old me to go do that part of the protocol leading up to the match, which meant a number of dinners with the general manager and folks from the palace. And went through all these different, scenarios, from when you're warming up and he hits the ball in the net, you go get his ball for him, no overhead slams, things like that. And which is, can be the case in Japanese culture, at least in my experience. Some of the worst news would be left for last. So the last meeting, we're saying our pleasantries. The match was going to be the next day. And he says, oh, by the way, you weren't planning on winning, were you? And, this is dumb American, right? Who's kind of in my first several months there. And I said, yeah, it's the club championship. We're going to try our best. So we show up the next day and we're having breakfast. We were lucky enough to have breakfast with the Crown Prince and his partner, and my partner and I, and we're talking, and he's decked out in, if you play tennis, Prince, the brand, Prince gear, which I guess is pretty cool, because maybe if they had a CJ brand or a Chris brand, I would probably wear it every now and then, if not all the time. So he was decked out in Prince gear. I remember that. And my partner was telling him, we Googled your palace. It looks like you got tennis courts. Do you play a lot? And this is now guys trying to be guys, figuring out how good are you? How, blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, I just flew in Roger. And this is in 2000 and, this would have been 2006. And he kind of says really, really quickly, he actually did flew in Roger Federer to practice before the match. So we start warming up, and it's pretty clear that we were the better team, but we made it go 3 sets. We ended up winning, but it was I think that so endeared us to him, and he invited us to sit at his table at the Big Gal, and then we became regular hitting partners. And it was, a great way to get instant credibility with some of my IBM Japan colleagues right away, which was needed, because I was that, as most expats do, I'm told anyway, I was probably most. You go in and you have this big American culture trying to emulate. And at the time, I had come from IBM corporate, and I thought I was going to be this very directed person, do this, do that. And they knew that I was going to leave in 2 years and just wait for the next 747 to fly in. So I thankfully figured that out pretty quickly and had to adjust my style. But getting, having that type of relationship with the Emperor and this little old finance guy in IBM Japan helped me make friends faster.
What a wild story. Do you think he respected you a little bit more because you didn't let him win?
My partner was a lot better than me. I think he had more to do that than me, but I think so. Yeah, it was a neat experience. It was really cool.
Thanks for sharing that. If you could tell your younger self something knowing what you know today, what would you tell him?
Patience. Gosh, it's the hardest thing. I thought everything was a straight line up, and some of the best journeys that I've gone through in my life have been kind of wrong turns that have turned out to be the right turn. So yeah, patience in not everything has to be up and to the right. It helps, but it doesn't have to be that way, especially from a career perspective.
So you think it's helpful to take some detours?
I think so. If they're purposeful, right, and you have intent behind them. Yeah. I mean, I've said this on multiple different occasions. There is no way that I would be where I am today if I did not step aside and learn how to build a product and how freaking hard it is, and learn how to sell and how hard it is, and learn how to like deliver on a product in like a regulated environment and how hard it is. And you just, as a CFO, sometimes you just get stuck on like looking at everything in a spreadsheet. And if you don't ultimately know and put your hands on it and have done it and put yourself in this, it doesn't mean every CFO has to go be a product person or be a salesperson, but know more than just what a day in the life is. Like, I think, yeah, I mean, I think then it can be really impactful, even if it's not that up and, straight line to, financial analyst, CFO one day.
There's something to be said about developing empathy for the people you're trying to forecast.
Yeah, so true. Yeah. Yeah.
More of a technical one. Can you walk me through your finance software stack? What tools does your team use to get the job done?
We use a mixture of NetSuite and Workday primarily.
Nice.
Yep.
Next one I got for you. This is the final one. What's the craziest thing you've ever had someone try to expense?
I mean, the first thing came to mind, but they deserved it. It was Super Bowl tickets, but like they deserved it.
They deserved it? Why? Did they sell a lot of stuff?
They trained a lot of great sellers.
Oh, say more about this. This is cool.
Yeah, I don't want to like divulge, but like, yeah, I mean, there's one of our best functions in our company. Like they're like these like fighter pilots that are our learning and development team. And they did an incredible, like every single day. In fact, they've kind of gone from training our internal salespeople, like training customers now on our product. So they're really like our fighter pilots, but as like reward. And I know the story of it. And it was kind of raised by like an accounting person, like, gosh, this is like, I was like, I don't know, like they deserved it.
That's amazing.
So, but that's the first thing. I'm sure there's others, but, yeah, that was a cool one. Yeah. I've never been to Super Bowl, so I was kind of a little bit jealous. But
usually on this podcast, when someone says Super Bowl tickets were purchased, it also follows like then we fired that person. So this was a bright spot.
Have you been? I've never been to Super Bowl. I haven't been to a lot of big sporting events. I have to check those off.
I went to the Patriots against the Giants the second time around because I grew up a huge Patriots fan. It was me, my dad, my brother, and his college roommates, because my dad and his college roommates were all from the Boston area. And I remember they said, like, Patriots suck growing up. So we all said in college, if they ever make it to the Super Bowl, we're going to make a pact and go. Yeah. So we went. We were in like the second to last row at Lucas Oil Stadium. And that Mario Manningham catch on the sideline just broke our hearts. And that was like the most depressing car ride home after an amazing day back to the hotel with my dad and all his friends.
Oh no. Well, now you're due for, oh gosh, I mean, trying to think of your draft. It wasn't a bad draft. It wasn't a standout draft.
I can't complain. I grew up with such good teams that like I'm spoiled at this point.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, this has been amazing. I appreciate all your insights and being so candid with us. Thanks for coming on the pod, Chris.
CJ, you're awesome. This is one of the truly like this is really fun. Really, really fun. Do it anytime again.
Run the Numbers is a mostly LLC production. Yelling an intro by Fat Joe. Artwork by some AI thingamajig. Podcast and video editing is done by Cleancast at cleancast.io. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of me, a guy who feeds his dog too much ice cream and has a history of net operating losses, LOL. If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And also check out mostlymetrics.com. That's my newsletter where I explore business models and financial metrics. Thanks for riding with me. Share this with your friends. Peace.